In the flickering light of a smartphone screen, a child's fingers dance across glass, commanding armies, building worlds, conquering galaxies with swipes and taps. 5,000 years ago, another child's fingers moved with equal intensity across a different surface, a wooden board inlaid with squares of ebony and ivory, moving carved pieces in patterns that would determine victory or defeat in the game of Senate. The technology differs, but the concentration, the joy, the complete absorption in play remains identical across the millennia. This is the paradox and the promise of childhood, that despite every revolution in human civilization, despite the rise and fall of empires, despite technological transformations that would seem like magic to our ancestors, children still play, and in that play, they remain fundamentally, recognizably human. The streets of ancient Thebes echoed with sounds that would be familiar to any modern parent: shrieks of laughter, competitive shouts, the rhythmic thud of objects hitting ground. Clay balls bounced against sun-baked mud brick walls, their hollow centers creating a distinctive sound as they rebounded into small, eager hands. These weren't merely spheres of dried earth. They were carefully crafted toys, some painted with geometric patterns, others left plain, their surfaces smoothed by countless hours of play until they fit perfectly in a child's palm. The balls varied in size and weight, allowing for different games, some requiring precision throws, others demanding quick catches, all developing hand-eye coordination that would serve these children well in their future lives along the Nile. Egyptian children inhabited a world where the sacred and the playful intertwined seamlessly. Their toys weren't simply diversions, but connections to the divine order that governed their universe. Small clay crocodiles with movable jaws allowed children to reenact the eternal struggle between order and chaos, between the life-giving Nile and its dangerous inhabitants. Wooden hippopotamus figures, carved with surprising anatomical accuracy, represented both the threat these massive creatures posed to farmers and fishermen and the protective power of Taweret, the hippopotamus goddess who watched over children and mothers. When an Egyptian child played with such toys, they weren't merely entertaining themselves. They were rehearsing the cosmological dramas that defined their civilization's understanding of existence. The dolls of ancient Egypt reveal a sophistication that challenges modern assumptions about primitive toys. Archaeologists have uncovered paddle dolls carved from flat pieces of wood, their bodies decorated with geometric patterns representing clothing or tattoos, their hair fashioned from strings of clay or wooden beads that created a distinctive sound when the doll moved. More elaborate examples featured articulated limbs connected with linen cord, allowing the dolls to assume different postures, to sit or stand or raise their arms in gestures that mimicked adult activities. Some dolls wore miniature jewelry, tiny faience beads strung on thread, copper wire twisted into bracelets, suggesting that children used these figures not just for nurturing play, but for fashion and adornment games that reflected the importance of appearance and status in Egyptian society. Spinning tops carved from wood or molded from clay whirled across Egyptian floors and courtyards, their motion mesmerizing children just as it would mesmerize their counterparts millennia later. The physics of the spinning top, the way it defies gravity, the way it wobbles and recovers, the way it eventually succumbs to friction and falls, provided endless fascination. Egyptian craftsmen created tops with different shapes and weights, each producing unique spinning characteristics. Some tops hummed as they spun, air passing through carefully carved holes, creating tones that varied with rotational speed. Children competed to see whose top could spin longest, developing the fine motor control and timing necessary to launch the top with maximum angular momentum. The game of Senate occupied a unique position in Egyptian culture, simultaneously a children's pastime and a profound religious ritual. The board, with its 30 squares arranged in 3 rows of 10, represented the journey of the soul through the afterlife, with certain squares marking beneficial or dangerous locations in the underworld. When children played Senate, they internalized the religious geography of death and resurrection that formed the foundation of Egyptian spirituality. The game required both luck and strategy. Throw sticks or knucklebones served as dice, their fall determining how many squares a piece could move. But players had choices about which pieces to move and when, creating opportunities for blocking opponents or advancing their own position. Tomb paintings show children and adults alike bent over Senate boards, the game transcending age boundaries to become a universal Egyptian pastime that connected the living to the dead, the present to eternity. Across the Mediterranean, Greek children inhabited a different world, one where play took on civic and educational dimensions that reflected their culture's emphasis on developing well-rounded citizens. The Greek ideal of paideia, comprehensive education of body, mind, and spirit, manifested in childhood games that were simultaneously fun and formative. Boys rolled hoops through the streets of Athens and Sparta, guiding wooden or bronze circles with sticks, developing the coordination and endurance that would serve them in military training and athletic competitions. The simple hoop game contained layers of meaning. It taught balance and spatial awareness, it built cardiovascular fitness, it created opportunities for competition and camaraderie, and it could be practiced alone or in groups, making it adaptable to different social situations. Knucklebones, the ankle bones of sheep or goats, or clay or bronze replicas, served as the Swiss Army knife of Greek play, adaptable to dozens of different games. Children threw knucklebones in the air and caught them on the backs of their hands, testing reflexes and dexterity. They tossed them like dice, using the 4 different sides that could land face up to generate random numbers for board games or gambling games. They used them as game pieces, moving them across boards or playing fields according to complex rules passed down through generations. The most skilled players could juggle multiple knucklebones, keeping several in the air simultaneously in displays of coordination that drew admiring crowds. Archaeological excavations have uncovered sets of knucklebones in children's grave, suggesting these humble objects held deep significance, perhaps representing the games and friendships of a life cut tragically short. Greek girls played with terracotta dolls that ranged from simple figurines to elaborate creations with articulated limbs, removable clothing, and detailed facial features. These dolls served multiple purposes. They were companions for imaginative play, tools for learning domestic skills, and religious offerings. When a Greek girl reached marriageable age, she traditionally dedicated her childhood dolls to Artemis, goddess of maidens, marking the transition from childhood to womanhood. This ritual transformed toys into sacred objects, acknowledging that play itself was a precious phase of life worthy of divine attention. The dolls found in sanctuaries show wear patterns indicating they were genuinely played with before dedication, not created specifically as offerings. These were beloved companions being released as their owners moved into new life stages. Ball games in ancient Greece achieved remarkable complexity, with different versions requiring different skills and strategies. Episkiros, a team ball game, involved players trying to throw a ball over their opponents' heads while preventing the opposing team from doing the same. The game required coordination between teammates, strategic positioning, quick reflexes, and physical endurance. It was simultaneously play and military training, teaching boys to work together, to anticipate opponents' moves, to maintain formation under pressure, all skills essential for the phalanx warfare that dominated Greek military tactics. The balls themselves varied from soft leather spheres stuffed with hair or feathers to harder balls made of wrapped cloth or even inflated pig bladders, each type creating different gameplay dynamics. As twilight descended on medieval European villages, children emerged from cottages and workshops, their daily chores completed, ready for the precious hours of play before darkness made outdoor games impossible. The village green became a stage for games that reflected and reimagined the feudal world surrounding these children. Mock tournaments transformed ordinary sticks into lances, and imagination elevated peasant children into knights errant, their stick horses prancing through quests to rescue imaginary maidens from imaginary dragons. These games weren't merely fantasy, they were rehearsals for a social order that valued martial prowess, and chivalric ideals, even if most of these children would never actually become knights. Through play, they internalized the values and narratives that structured their society. Blind man's buff, known by various names across medieval Europe, created moments of delicious tension and hilarity in castle courtyards and village squares alike. One child, blindfolded with a strip of cloth, stumbled about trying to catch others who darted close, taunting and teasing, then dancing away before grasping hands could seize them. The game taught spatial awareness, listening skills, and the ability to move confidently despite sensory deprivation. It also created opportunities for social bonding and mild transgression in a society with strict rules about touching and personal space. Blind man's buff allowed physical contact that would otherwise be inappropriate, all sanctioned by the framework of play. Hoop rolling required nothing but a wooden wheel, perhaps salvaged from a broken cart, and a stick, yet it provided endless entertainment and exercise. Children raced their hoops down village lanes, developing the precise touch needed to keep the hoop upright and moving at maximum speed without toppling. The best players could navigate turns, avoid obstacles, and maintain control over rough terrain, their hoops seeming to possess minds of their own as they rolled smoothly along paths that would challenge lesser players. Competitions emerged naturally, with children challenging each other to races or obstacle courses, the simple hoop becoming a vehicle for developing skills, establishing social hierarchies, and creating the shared experiences that bonded childhood friends. The dolls of medieval Europe reflected the materials and skills available to their makers. Wealthy children might possess dolls carved from wood by skilled craftsmen, their faces painted with delicate features, their bodies dressed in miniature versions of adult clothing complete with tiny buttons and embroidered details. Poor children played with dolls fashioned from scraps, cloth bodies stuffed with straw or wool, faces embroidered with simple stitches, clothing made from fabric remnants. Yet both types of dolls served identical purposes in play. They were babies to be cared for, characters in elaborate imaginative narratives, companions who listened to secrets and witnessed childhood joys and sorrows. The quality of the doll mattered less than the imagination of the child who played with it. Wooden whistles carved by fathers or village craftsmen introduced children to music and sound manipulation. These weren't sophisticated instruments, but simple tubes with finger holes that could produce different pitches when covered or uncovered. Children learned through experimentation which combinations of covered holes produced which sounds, developing early understanding of cause and effect, pattern recognition, and musical relationships. Groups of children with whistles could create cacophonous concerts or attempt to play simple melodies together, learning cooperation and listening skills alongside musical concepts. Marbles made from clay, stone, or glass, depending on family wealth, became objects of intense childhood economics. Children traded marbles, competed for them in games of skill, treasured particularly beautiful or rare examples. The games themselves varied by region and evolved over time, but most involved shooting marbles at targets or at other marbles, requiring precise control of force and angle. A skilled marble player developed fine motor control, spatial reasoning, and understanding of physics, how different surfaces affected marble movement, how spin could alter trajectory, how to calculate angles of approach. The best marbles, smooth, perfectly round, made from precious materials, became status symbols, their possession marking successful players and shrewd traders. Spinning tops in medieval Europe ranged from simple wooden cones that children set spinning with their fingers to elaborate whipping tops that required a cord wrapped around the top's shaft and pulled sharply to set it spinning. The whipping top could then be kept spinning by striking it with a small whip, the impacts adding energy to overcome friction. Skilled players could keep tops spinning for impressive durations, could make them travel across surfaces, could even make them climb slight inclines through careful whip placement. Top spinning competitions drew crowds of children and adults, the simple toy becoming a vehicle for demonstrating skill and earning respect. Folk games and rhymes passed from generation to generation through oral transmission, creating cultural continuity that connected medieval children to ancestors they would never meet and descendants they would never know. Ring Around the Rosie, London Bridge, and countless other singing games combined music, movement, and social interaction in packages that were simultaneously entertainment and cultural education. The rhymes often contained historical references or moral lessons, though children rarely understood these deeper meanings. They simply enjoyed the rhythm of the words, the pleasure of moving together, the satisfaction of completing familiar patterns. Across these three civilizations, Egyptian, Greek, and medieval European, patterns emerge that reveal universal aspects of human play. All three cultures used dolls to teach nurturing behaviors, to allow children to practice caregiving roles they would assume as adults. The specific forms varied. Egyptian paddle dolls differed dramatically from Greek terracotta figures and medieval cloth dolls, but the underlying function remained constant. Children across millennia have used representations of human figures to work through social relationships, to rehearse adult roles, to create narratives that help them understand their world. Physical games in all three civilizations prepared children for adult activities while providing immediate enjoyment. Egyptian children throwing clay balls developed coordination useful for hunting or warfare. Greek boys rolling hoops built endurance for military service. Medieval children playing mock tournaments internalized chivalric values while developing physical skills. The games were simultaneously present-focused, played for immediate pleasure, and future-oriented, building capabilities children would need in adulthood. Board and strategy games across these cultures developed cognitive skills valued by each society. Senate taught Egyptian children about religious geography and fate while building strategic thinking. Greek knucklebone games developed mathematical reasoning and probability assessment. Medieval chess and tables games, predecessors to modern backgammon, taught strategic planning and tactical thinking. These games created mental challenges that stretched children's cognitive abilities while entertaining them sufficiently to maintain engagement. The materials available to each civilization shaped their play in fundamental ways. Egypt's abundant clay appeared in balls, dolls, figurines, and game pieces. The Nile's papyrus became material for simple toys and games. Greece's pottery industry produced terracotta dolls and game pieces of remarkable quality. Their metalworking skills created bronze hoops and elaborate knucklebones. Medieval Europe's forests provided wood for countless toys, hoops, dolls, whistles, tops, swords. Textile production supplied cloth for dolls and balls. Each civilization's play reflected its material culture, its technological capabilities, its relationship with the natural environment. Class differences in play existed across all three civilizations, yet with interesting complexities. Wealthy children possessed more elaborate toys, but poor children often demonstrated greater creativity with limited materials. An Egyptian noble's child might have a wooden crocodile with movable jaws made by a skilled craftsman, while a peasant child played with a crocodile shape molded from Nile mud. Both toys served similar imaginative purposes. A Greek aristocrat's daughter might own an articulated terracotta doll with a wardrobe of miniature clothing, while a poor girl played with a simple clay figure. Both girls used their dolls to rehearse adult roles and create narratives. Medieval nobles' children had carved wooden horses with real horsehair manes, while peasant children rode sticks with rags tied to one end. Yet both groups of children galloped through identical imaginary adventures.